The first thing I noticed when I opened my desk drawer wasn't what was there. It was what wasn't. My passport, which I'd left right next to my business cards and emergency cash, had vanished like smoke. Looking for something, Caleb? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I turned to find my wife Noelle standing in the doorway of our home office, arms crossed, wearing that smug smile I'd grown to hate over the past 6 months. She looked like a cat who'd just devoured an entire aviary. "My passport," I said, keeping my voice level. "I need it for Jake's wedding in Barbados tomorrow." "Oh, that old thing?" She stepped into the room, her blonde hair catching the lamplight. "I took care of it for you." The way she said, "took care of it," made my stomach drop. "What do you mean, took care of it?" "I mean, I shredded it into 1,000 pieces and flushed it down the toilet." Her smile widened. "You're not going anywhere, Caleb. You're staying right here where you belong." I stared at her, my mind reeling. Jake was my younger brother, and this was his destination wedding, something he'd been planning for over a year. I was supposed to be his best man. "You destroyed my passport," I said slowly, "to keep me from going to my brother's wedding." "That's right." She moved closer, her green eyes glittering with satisfaction. "I'm tired of you putting everyone else before me. Your brother, your job, your stupid friends. When's the last time you took me somewhere nice?" "We went to Martha's Vineyard last month. For your company retreat. That doesn't count." She threw her hands up dramatically. "I'm your wife, Caleb. I should come first." I looked at this woman I'd married 3 years ago, this person I thought I knew, and felt something cold settle in my chest. The Noelle I'd fallen in love with had been spontaneous and fun. This version was controlling and petty. "You realize destroying someone's passport is a federal crime, right?" She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Who's going to prosecute me? You? We both know you don't have the spine for that." That's when I heard the giggling from the hallway. Sierra, Noelle's shop assistant, poked her head around the corner, phone in hand. "Did you get it?" Sierra whispered loudly. "Viv wants to see his face when you told him." "Every second," Noelle said, pulling out her own phone. "This is going straight to our group chat." I realized they'd been recording this entire conversation. My humiliation was going to be entertainment for Noelle's little circle of friends. "You're right about one thing," I said quietly. "I don't have the spine to prosecute my wife." I walked past her toward the bedroom. "But I also don't have the spine to stay married to someone who would do this." "What's that supposed to mean?" The smugness was fading from her voice. "It means I'm going to pack a bag, drive to Boston, get an emergency passport, and make my brother's wedding." I pulled my suitcase from the closet. "And when I get back, we're going to have a very different conversation. You can't get a passport overnight." "Actually, you can. Emergency services for family weddings." I started throwing clothes into the suitcase. I called them yesterday to confirm the process, just in case something happened to my documents during travel. The look on her face was priceless. She hadn't expected me to have a backup plan. "Caleb, wait." Her tone shifted, becoming wheedling. "I was just upset. We can work this out." "No," I said, zipping up the suitcase. "We can't. You destroyed federal documents to control me, then filmed it for your friend's amusement. There's no working that out." I walked past her toward the front door. Sierra had disappeared, probably running back to tell Viv and the others that their prank had backfired spectacularly. "If you leave this house," Noelle called after me, "don't bother coming back." I paused at the door and looked back at her. She stood in the hallway of our Victorian house, surrounded by all the antique furniture and flower arrangements that had been her passion projects. 3 years of marriage, and it felt like I was looking at a stranger. "I'll be back," I said. "But not for the reasons you think." I drove through the night to Boston, my hands gripping the steering wheel as I replayed the evening in my head. The federal building opened at 6 a.m. for emergency services. By 8, I had a temporary passport in hand. By noon, I was on a plane to Barbados. Jake's wedding was beautiful. Standing beside him as he married his college sweetheart Emma, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: genuine happiness. During the reception, I pulled out my phone and called my sister Maddie. "Caleb, how's the wedding?" "Perfect. Listen, I need a favor. Can you recommend a good divorce attorney?" There was a pause. "What happened?" I told her everything. When I finished, Maddie was quiet for a long moment. "Jesus, Caleb, I'm sorry." "Don't be, I'm not." I watched Jake and Emma dancing on the beach, the sunset painting everything golden. "I'm done being sorry. When I get home, things are going to change." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to show Noelle what happens when you try to cage someone who's learned how to fly." The next morning, I filed the divorce papers from a beach cafe in Bridgetown. The lawyer Maddie recommended had expedited everything: irreconcilable differences, division of assets, the whole package. But that was just the beginning. I flew back to Boston 3 days later, divorce papers in my briefcase and a plan forming in my mind. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway, but Noelle's Subaru was parked in its usual spot. I sat in my car for a moment, looking at the place I'd called home for 3 years. It was a beautiful house, a Victorian we'd bought together and spent months renovating. Noelle had insisted on period-appropriate everything: furniture, wallpaper, even the doorknobs. It had cost us a fortune, but she'd been so happy working on it that I'd gone along with every expensive decision. Now it just looked like a prison I'd escaped from. I walked up the front steps and tried my key. It didn't work. She'd changed the locks. I rang the doorbell and waited. After a few minutes, I heard footsteps, then Noelle's voice through the door. "Who is it?" "Your husband." The door opened, revealing Noelle in her bathrobe, hair disheveled, eyes red-rimmed. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "You came back," she said, and there was something vulnerable in her voice that reminded me of the woman I'd married. "I said I would." She stepped aside to let me in. The house smelled like wilted flowers and stale wine. There were empty bottles on the coffee table and tissues scattered across the couch. "How was the wedding?" she asked quietly. "Beautiful." Jake and Emma looked happy. I set my briefcase down on the hall table. "We need to talk." "I know. I've been thinking while you were gone, and you're right. I overreacted. I was jealous and stupid, and I'm sorry." She moved closer to me. "Can we please just forget this happened and move on?" I looked at her, really looked at her. The tears in her eyes seemed genuine. Her hands were shaking slightly. For a moment I almost wavered. Then I remembered the sound of her laughter when she told me she'd destroyed my passport, the way she'd filmed my reaction for her friend's entertainment. "I'm afraid it's too late for that," I said, opening my briefcase and pulling out the divorce papers. "These were filed in Barbados 3 days ago. You'll be served officially within the week." The color drained from her face. "Caleb, no. Please. We can work this out." "You were right about one thing," I said. "I didn't have the spine to fight you. But I found it on that beach in Barbados, watching my brother marry someone who actually loves him." "I do love you." "No, you don't. You love controlling me. There's a difference." She sank onto the couch, the papers scattered around her like fallen leaves. "What about the house? Our life together?" "The house will be sold and the proceeds split according to our prenup. As for our life together?" I shrugged. "That ended when you decided my passport was yours to destroy." "I was just scared," she said, tears streaming down her face now. "Scared you'd meet someone else. Scared you'd realize you could do better than me." "So you decided to prove it by showing me exactly who you really are?" She flinched, like I'd slapped her. "I'll be staying at the Marriott downtown until this is settled," I said, picking up my briefcase. "My lawyer will be in touch." "Caleb, wait." But I was already walking toward the door. I'd said everything I needed to say. What I didn't say was that the divorce papers were just the opening move. Noelle had humiliated me in front of her friends, tried to trap me in a marriage through sabotage, and filmed it all for entertainment. She wanted to play games? Fine. But she was about to learn that I was much better at them than she'd ever imagined. The next morning, I drove to my office at Morrison Logistics, the mid-sized shipping company where I worked as a senior consultant. It was a glass and steel building downtown, the kind of place that looked impressive but felt sterile. My friend Nate worked security there. We'd known each other since college, and he'd gotten me the job 3 years ago when I'd moved to town for Noelle. He was waiting by the elevator when I walked in. "Heard you had an interesting week," he said, falling into step beside me. "News travels fast. Small town. Plus, Sierra's been running her mouth at the Manifest." The Manifest was the local bar where half our co-workers hung out after work. "She's telling everyone you abandoned your wife to go party in the Caribbean." I stopped walking. "She's what?" "Yeah, apparently Noelle's playing the victim. Poor abandoned wife, husband ran off to a tropical paradise instead of working on their marriage." Nate shook his head. "She's got half the town feeling sorry for her." I felt that cold feeling in my chest again, but this time it was mixed with something else. Anger. "Interesting story," I said. "Too bad it's complete bullshit." I figured. "You want to tell me what really happened?" So I did. When I finished, Nate was quiet for a long moment. "Jesus, man, I'm sorry." "Don't be, I'm not." I pressed the elevator button. "But I think it's time people knew the truth." "What are you going to do?" I smiled, and it felt sharp as broken glass. "I'm going to give this town something to really talk about." The first thing I did was visit Mrs. Farnsworth, our 78-year-old neighbor who knew everything that happened in our part of town. She was working in her garden when I walked over, her gray hair tucked under a sun hat. "Caleb, I heard you were back from your trip." "Yes, ma'am. Beautiful wedding." I leaned against her fence. "I wanted to thank you for keeping an eye on the house while I was gone." "Of course, dear. Though I have to say, there was quite a bit of activity over there." "Oh?" Her eyes lit up with the joy of someone about to share premium gossip. "Well, that young man who delivers wine to Noelle's shop, Eli something, he was there every night you were gone. His Tesla was parked in your driveway until all hours. Eli Crane. I knew him. Smooth-talking guy who supplied wine to half the restaurants in town. He'd always been a little too friendly with Noelle whenever I saw them together." "Every night?" I asked. "Every single one. Left around dawn each morning." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "I don't like to gossip, but it did seem odd, what with you being out of town and all." "Very odd," I agreed. "Thank you for letting me know." I walked back to my house, well, soon-to-be former house, and sat in my car thinking. Noelle had been playing the victim, telling everyone I'd abandoned her, but she'd been entertaining Eli the entire time I was gone. Time to even the playing field. I drove to Noelle's flower shop, a cute little storefront called Petals and Stems, that she'd opened 2 years ago with money from her trust fund. The bell chimed as I walked in. Sierra was behind the counter, her purple-streaked hair falling over one eye as she arranged roses. She looked up when she saw me, and her expression shifted from surprise to hostility. "What do you want?" "Just wanted to see how business was going while I was away." I looked around the shop, noting the wilted arrangements and dusty surfaces. "Looks like things have been busy. Noelle's been devastated, if you must know. She's barely been able to work." That's interesting, because Mrs. Farnsworth mentioned seeing Eli's car at our house every night I was gone." I watched Sierra's face carefully. I'm sure he was just providing emotional support. Sierra's cheeks flushed red. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course not." I picked up a wilted carnation from the nearest arrangement. "These flowers look about as fresh as your story about me abandoning my wife." "You did abandon her." "Actually, I went to my brother's wedding after Noelle destroyed my passport to try to stop me. but I'm sure she mentioned that part when she was crying on your shoulder. Sierra's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Clearly, Noelle had left out that crucial detail. Where is Noelle, by the way? She's at lunch. At the Marina Motel restaurant? I asked innocently. I saw Eli's Tesla in the parking lot when I drove by. Sierra went pale. I think you should leave. I think you're right. I headed toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Sierra, you might want to be more careful about who you record and what you do with the footage. Revenge porn laws apply to humiliation videos too. I left her standing there with her mouth hanging open. My next stop was The Manifest, the bar where Nate had said Sierra was spreading her version of events. It was a typical townie bar, dark wood, neon beer signs, and the kind of regulars who treated gossip like currency. I ordered a beer and sat at the bar, waiting. I didn't have to wait long. Well, look who's back from paradise. I turned to see Tommy Brennan, a guy I'd known casually through Noelle's social circle. He was grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Hey, Tommy. Heard you had quite the vacation while your wife was falling apart at home. Funny thing about that story, I said, taking a sip of my beer. It's missing some key details. Like what? Like the fact that Noelle destroyed my passport to try to stop me from going to my brother's wedding, and the fact that she filmed herself doing it for her friend's entertainment. Tommy's grin faltered. That's not what I heard. I'm sure it's not, but here's the thing about the truth. It has a way of coming out. I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot of the divorce papers. Filed 3 days ago in Barbados. Irreconcilable differences. Jesus, man. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. You heard Sierra's version, which conveniently left out the part where my wife committed a federal crime to control me. I finished my beer and stood up. But now you know the real story. Feel free to share it. I left Tommy sitting at the bar, staring at his drink. By the time I got back to my hotel room, my phone was buzzing with text messages. Word was spreading fast in our small town, and people were starting to ask questions. The best part was, I hadn't lied about anything. I'd simply told the truth, something Noelle and her friends had apparently forgotten how to do. But this was just the beginning. Noelle had tried to humiliate me, control me, and destroy my relationship with my family. She'd turned my friends against me and played the victim while cheating with Eli. Time to show her what real consequences looked like. 2 days later, I was having coffee at the diner downtown when Viv, Noelle's influencer friend, stormed in. She was the kind of person who documented every moment of her life on social media, always posing with her phone, always creating content. You bastard, she hissed, sliding into the booth across from me. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've told the truth. Novel concept, I know. You've ruined everything. Noelle's business is tanking. People are canceling orders and everyone's talking about her and Eli. Interesting. And whose fault would that be? Viv's perfectly contoured face twisted with rage. She made one mistake, and you're destroying her life over it. One mistake? I set down my coffee cup carefully. She destroyed federal documents, filmed it for entertainment, spread lies about me to mutual friends, and cheated on me while I was at my brother's wedding. That's not one mistake, Viv. That's a pattern of behavior. She was scared. She thought you were going to leave her. So she decided to prove she was worth leaving? I shook my head. That's some impressive logic. You don't understand what it's like to be insecure, to worry that you're not good enough. You're right. I don't understand destroying someone else's life because of your own insecurities. I leaned forward. But I'm learning. Viv's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means your little group decided to play games with my life. You filmed my humiliation, spread lies about me, and helped Noelle cheat. Now you're upset that there are consequences? We didn't help her cheat. Really? Who do you think was watching the shop while Noelle was entertaining Eli? Who covered for her when customers called? I pulled out my phone. I've got the phone records, Viv. Every call that came to the shop while Noelle was otherwise occupied got forwarded to your number. Her face went white. That doesn't mean... It means you were an accessory to adultery, and now you're trying to blame me for the fallout. I stood up and threw a 10 on the table. Here's some free advice. Next time you help someone destroy their marriage, make sure you're not leaving a digital trail. I walked out of the diner, leaving Viv sitting there in shock. That afternoon, I got a call from Nate. "You need to get down to the manifest," he said. "Now." "Why?" "Because Eli's here, drunk off his ass, and he's telling everyone who'll listen that you threatened him." "I haven't even talked to Eli." "I know that. You know that, but he's spinning quite a tale. Says you cornered him in an alley and threatened to eliminate him if he didn't stay away from Noelle." I felt that familiar cold anger settle in my chest. "I'll be right there." The manifest was packed when I arrived, the after-work crowd settling in for the evening. Eli was at the far end of the bar, gesturing wildly as he talked to anyone who would listen. He was a good-looking guy in his mid-30s, the kind who was used to charming his way out of trouble. "Completely unhinged," he was saying as I approached. "He threatened to assault me with a tire iron. I'm thinking about getting a restraining order." "That's interesting," I said loudly enough for half the bar to hear, "since we've never actually had a conversation." The bar went quiet. Eli turned around, his face flushed with alcohol and embarrassment. "Caleb, there you are. We need to talk." "Apparently we do." I moved closer, and several people pulled out their phones. In a town this size, any confrontation was entertainment. "I'm curious about this conversation where I threatened you. When exactly did that happen?" "You know when?" "Actually, I don't. See, I've been very careful to avoid you entirely. Haven't called you, haven't approached you, haven't even been in the same room as you." I looked around the bar. "Until now." Eli's confidence was starting to waver. You left me threatening voicemails." "Really? That's weird, because I don't have your number." I pulled out my phone. "Want to call it right now? We can see if it goes to voicemail." "I deleted them." "Of course you did. How convenient." I stepped closer, and Eli instinctively backed up. "Here's what I think happened. I think you've been sleeping with my wife, got caught, and now you're trying to make me the bad guy to save face. That's not... Mrs. Farnsworth saw your car at my house every night I was gone, Eli. The whole town knows about you and Noelle now, so instead of owning up to being a homewrecker, you decided to paint me as the villain." The bar was silent now. Everyone was watching, phones recording, waiting to see what would happen next. "I never meant for it to happen," Eli said quietly. "But it did happen. And now you're here, drunk, telling lies about me to cover your own ass." I looked around the room. "Well, here I am. If you've got something to say to me, say it." Eli looked around the bar, realizing that his story was falling apart in real time. The people who had been sympathetic a few minutes ago were now looking at him with disgust. I think I should go," he mumbled. "Good idea. But Eli?" I waited until he looked at me. "Next time you want to spread lies about someone, make sure they're not easily disproven. Small towns have long memories." Eli stumbled toward the exit, and the bar erupted in conversation. I could hear fragments of it. "Can't believe he was lying. Poor Caleb. What a scumbag." Nate appeared at my elbow. "Well, that was something." "That was justice," I said. "Finally." But even as I said it, I knew this wasn't over. Noelle, Eli, Sierra, and Viv had all tried to destroy my reputation to cover their own behavior. They'd lied, cheated, and schemed, thinking I was too weak to fight back. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Something big had happened overnight. I scrolled through the messages, trying to piece together what was going on. Most were from people I barely knew, offering support or asking for my side of the story. But one from Maddie caught my attention. Check Viv's Instagram, now. I opened the app and navigated to Viv's profile. Her latest post, uploaded at 2 a.m., was a video titled The Truth About Caleb and Noelle. In it, a clearly drunk Viv was ranting about how I'd manipulated the situation, how Noelle was the real victim, and how she had evidence that I'd been emotionally abusive throughout our marriage. But the interesting part wasn't what she said. It was what was happening in the background. The video was filmed at Noelle's house, and you could clearly see Eli in the kitchen, shirtless, making coffee like he owned the place. The comments section was brutal. Is that Eli in the background? Thought he was just a friend? This aged like milk, posted at 2 a.m. from the victim's house with her boyfriend in the kitchen. Girl, delete this. You're making it worse. But the best part was that Viv, in her drunken state, had forgotten to turn off location services. The video was geotagged to Noelle's address, timestamped at 2 a.m., with Eli clearly visible in the frame. It was the perfect self-own. My phone rang. Maddie. Did you see it? Just watched it. That's wow. She's deleted it, but not before half the town screenshot it. There are copies everywhere. Maddie laughed. I have to admit, I'm impressed. You didn't have to do anything. They destroyed themselves. Karma's a beautiful thing. So, what's next? I looked out the window of my hotel room at the town I'd called home for 3 years. Next, I finish what they started. That afternoon, I drove to the house to collect more of my belongings. Noelle's car was gone, but Eli's Tesla was in the driveway. I used my garage door opener, she hadn't thought to change that code, and parked inside. I could hear voices from the kitchen as I entered through the garage. Noelle and Eli arguing. Told you this was a bad idea, Eli was saying. Now the whole town thinks we're together. We are together. Not officially. Not until your divorce is final. So what, you're embarrassed to be seen with me now? I crept closer to the kitchen, staying out of sight. I'm embarrassed by this whole situation, Eli said. Your psycho husband has turned everyone against us. Caleb's not psycho, he's just persistent. He destroyed my reputation. My business is suffering because people think I'm a homewrecker. You are a homewrecker. There was a long pause. Maybe this was a mistake, Eli said finally. What's that supposed to mean? I mean, maybe I should step back until this all blows over. You're leaving me? Noelle's voice was getting shrill. Just like that? I'm not leaving you. I'm just taking a break. A break? A break? Something crashed, probably a plate. I destroyed my marriage for you. You destroyed your marriage because you're controlling and paranoid. Another crash. Bigger this time. Get out, Noelle said quietly. Noelle! Get out! I heard footsteps heading toward the front door and quickly moved to the living room, where I could see the entryway. Eli stormed out, slamming the door behind him. A few seconds later, I heard his Tesla start up and drive away. Noelle appeared in the living room doorway, tears streaming down her face. She saw me and froze. How long have you been here? Long enough. I looked at the broken dishes scattered across the kitchen floor, visible through the doorway. Trouble in paradise? Don't. She wiped her eyes. Just don't. I'm just here for my things. I gestured toward the stairs. I'll be out of your way in a few minutes. Caleb, wait. She moved closer. I know you hate me right now, but we had something good once. We were happy. Were we? Or were you just better at hiding who you really were? I made mistakes. You destroyed federal documents, cheated on me, lied to our friends, and filmed my humiliation for entertainment. Those aren't mistakes, Noelle. That's who you are. She flinched like I'd hit her. I was scared of losing you. So you gave me every reason to leave? I shook my head. That's not fear. That's sabotage. And now you're paying the price. The whole town hates me. The whole town knows who you really are. There's a difference. I walked upstairs to pack the rest of my clothes. When I came back down, Noelle was sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. "Where will you go?" she asked, without looking at me. "I got a job offer in Seattle. Morrison's opening a West Coast office and they want me to run it." Now she looked at me. "You're leaving town?" "There's nothing left for me here." "What about the house?" "It'll sell. Market's good right now." I picked up my suitcase. "My lawyer will handle everything." I walked toward the door, then stopped. "For what it's worth, Noelle, I did love you. The person I thought you were anyway." "I'm still that person." "No," I said sadly. "You're not. And the tragedy is, you probably never were." I left her sitting there in our empty house, surrounded by all the beautiful things she'd insisted on buying, all the period-appropriate furniture and expensive decorations that had never made us happy. 3 weeks later, I was loading my car for the drive to Seattle when Nate appeared with a 6-pack of beer. "Farewell drink?" "Why not?" We sat on the tailgate of my truck, drinking beer and watching the sun set over the town that had been my home for 3 years. "Heard Noelle's closing the flower shop," Nate said. "Not surprising. Hard to run a business when half your customers think you're a cheater and the other half think you're crazy." "Eli's leaving town too. Lost most of his restaurant contracts." "Karma." "What about Sierra and Viv?" I smiled. "Sierra got fired from the shop when it closed. And Viv, well, let's just say her influencer career took a hit when people realized she helps her friends cheat and then lies about it online. You really got them all, didn't you?" "I didn't do anything. I just told the truth and let them destroy themselves." I finished my beer. "The best revenge is living well, right?" "Is that what this is? Revenge?" I thought about it for a moment. No. Revenge would have been sinking to their level, playing their games, trying to hurt them the way they hurt me. I looked at the divorce papers in my briefcase, the job offer letter, the keys to my new life. This is just consequences. They made choices, and now they're living with the results. And you're free. Finally. The next morning, I drove out of town as the sun was rising, leaving behind the Victorian house, the flower shop, the bar where everyone knew everyone's business, and the woman who had tried to destroy my passport but had ended up destroying herself instead. In my rearview mirror, I could see the town getting smaller and smaller until it disappeared entirely. 6 months later, I was settling into my new office in Seattle when my assistant buzzed me. "Mr. Gannon, there's a woman on line 2 who says she's your ex-wife. Should I put her through?" I stared at the blinking light on my phone for a long moment, then shook my head. "Take a message. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way." I had a new life now, a better life, built on truth instead of lies, trust instead of control, and freedom instead of fear. Noelle had tried to cancel my trip to paradise, but in the end, she'd given me something even better, the motivation to find it for myself.